Post-Aristotelian Ancient Philosophy, Part 1, A Brief History Lesson. What went on after Aristotle? Professor Michael Botwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. Well, we have to know a little bit about what's going on geopolitically to help us understand what's going on philosophically during these times, post-Aristotle. The first big blow comes when the Athenian League is defeated by Sparta and her allies, and the Spartans occupy Athens. Basically, at this point, Athens and the Athenians lose their preeminence as the center of Greek culture. You can imagine many of the intelligentsia fled to other places, and that was a big downer, basically. Imagine if our country suffered a grand defeat and all of a sudden we're taken over by a rival. It would make you think very differently. Well, as time goes on, not only does Athens lose its preeminence in terms of Greek world, but eventually Rome. I said eventually Rome. There we go. Conquers Greece. Eventually, Rome would capture the entire Mediterranean basin, and its empire would extend up and through Britain to the border of Scotland, where they couldn't quite deal with the Picts, who were extremely mean and nasty fighters. So they built Hadrian's Wall to keep them out. Much of Western Europe, Spain, what we now know as France and Germany, as well as the Mediterranean basin, came under the Roman influence. And the Roman way of looking and administering the world. The Romans were great bureaucrats. They were great at organizing things. Well, what does this have to do with what we're talking about? Quite a bit, actually. Philosophy changed its focus. The abstract world no longer was of interest. If you were able to just lie around on couches and philosophize, and now you're under Roman rule and you're mucking around, your lifestyle changes radically. You're going to find the next set of philosophers match their labels of cynics and skeptics and stoics, because they're now dealing not with these high-end esoteric active reason things like Aristotle did, but rather the everyday problems of living. And you're going to see that in terms of the cynics not wanting to be attached to luxurious stuff, the Epicureans interested in what happiness is really about, and the Stoics just coming to the realization that everyone has a place in society and you should just stay in it. You might not agree with these philosophies, but that's what was going on. So a lot of these movements are contemporaneous, and you'll find them interesting. After these movements, we get into a period where Jesus is born, spends his time in the Middle East, and Christianity is born. And eventually Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, and it gains great prominence, and the philosophers and thinkers are now going to be the early Christian religious leaders. Here's a map showing you the extent of the Roman Empire. And you can imagine if you were used to being under your own rule, now you're subjugated to Rome. It's going to be kind of a bummer. And that's where philosophy goes to next. So we'll see you next time in the history of psychology. Bye now. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020. Professor Michael Botwin. All rights reserved.